Welcome to the Whole Man Academy podcast. We cut the bullshit and get real about building your ideal life. If you're done with settling and you've got the guts to aim higher, you're in the right place. We bring you ideas, strategies, straight talk, and real stories from guys who are living life on their terms. Men who refuse to settle for mediocrity. They're here to share the raw truth about what it takes to break free from the mundane and step up your game. Why? Because the world needs strong men now more than ever. And it all starts here at the Whole Man Academy.
Okay, so before we start, come January 2026, some of you will know the network was launched about 2 years ago, which was a membership for basically the ambitious men that want to get together and work on things together and also connect with each other. And that's grown to 30 men over the last couple of years. But what I realized was that there's different levels of desire to invest, different levels of desire to have proximity to me, and to do your own work. So come January, there will be 3 tiers of the membership, or definitely 2, and then we'll work on the other one. And one will be called the Spark, which is for guys who want entry-level personal development without the calls, without everything else. So the best way to find out about it is, if you haven't already, just fill in the quiz, which is under the video or somewhere on the links. And just get on the Whole Man Journal kind of email list, and all the details will be coming out on there as and when they happen. And for me, it's just really important because what it will do as the world descends into some interesting times and interesting situations is help the men connect, help you take advantage of all the tools that I've created for through the Whole Man Academy, and also connect you with the other guys in the movement, regardless of whether you're in tier 1, tier 2, or the biggest tier will be the business one, which we'll do at some point. So yeah, the only action you got to take now, if you haven't already joined the email list, is just fill in the quiz, get your Whole Man score with a link below or somewhere in the show notes, and we will go from there. Okay, so this is the Whole Man Academy podcast, episode 143, I think it is, which will probably be the last one of 2025 before we get into 2026, which I have got various guests lined up for that. But today is a chap who I found on LinkedIn, stalking LinkedIn for interesting people, and his bio came up. So today I'm talking to Simon Watson, and I'll read your quick bio, which was: I've helped build, scale, and sell 3 companies, advised dozens of founder-led teams, and coached execs across SaaS agencies and tech-enabled services, generating hundreds of millions in enterprise value along the way. So, mate, firstly, where are you? How are you? But then what would your title be?
I think you can buy titles nowadays, like law stuff like that. So maybe I'll
Yeah.
go for something like that. But no, well, it's good to be. We've been talking about this for a while, so it's good to actually be on the pod and share some of the stories. So yeah, where am I based? I'm a London boy, south of the river. Yeah, grew up in London and grew up in Hampshire. So born in London, grew up in Hampshire, and I've been living back in London for the last 15 years with my wife and kids. And I guess my title essentially for my practice is just I'm a founder and the principal consultant, uh,
Mm,
which sounds very posh, but essentially it just means working with typically with founder-led businesses, and certainly the CEOs of the companies and the senior leadership teams of those businesses, to really support them on their journey to growth. And that's typically through revenue acquisition. So whether that's through acquiring a new customer or sets of new customers, or working with their account management team to expand the current relationships that they've got within those businesses.
mhm,
A land and expand kind of strategy. They might have an agency with only one client, and they want to tap into the other 9 clients within that agency. So there's sort of strategies to kind of deploy against that. And then right the way through to sort of fixing leaky buckets, as I call them. So you've got lots of customers coming into the bucket, but they kind of fall out the bottom for various different reasons. So that's a spectrum. And obviously within that spectrum, there are tens, if not hundreds of different things that I could get involved in to
mm,
support that business.
yeah.
But the business is called Revenue and Beyond. So it's about, yeah, helping them to secure or build new revenue. And then the beyond piece means, making sure that revenue is profitable and allows them to grow into
Mm.
the directions that they need them to go, need the businesses to grow into.
I was thinking of you saying it's probably not a more important time, maybe in our lifetimes. Well, I'm 47 or 48, one and two, but with businesses having to navigate the tyrannical government, the businesses with AI obviously coming up and them having to navigate that, and taxes and everything else that's going on. I was walking around a local town centre the other day and noticing when you see companies like Debenhams that were empty because that had gone,
Mm.
and lots of different smaller ones. So I feel like with the economy where it is, and we're recording this in mid-December 2025, the economy for me is kind of blinking red or flashing red, as it were. What's your take on the kind of the UK economy at the moment? Because obviously, if you're dealing with businesses, it's not just necessarily about the business. I guess it's about what's happening externally as well.
Mm. Well, if you read the headlines, it's all pretty dismal reading.
Mm,
And there's this. It appears to be that there's a mass exodus as well. People want to leave and maybe go to a different country that maybe treats entrepreneurs or business owners or those that are creating wealth a bit more fairly. That and there's a lot of truth behind some of that. But I think there is still a level of optimism. I think the thing is with the UK particularly, we it's easy for us to forget our roots and our heritage and some of the things that we've been responsible for in
hmm
terms of innovation. Whether that's things like music, we forget about the arts and in the music side of things, or whether that is more up to date AI. And we've always been a melting pot. We've always been a catalyst for growth, whether that's internally or externally around the world. And I think people forget about that. So there is when you start having meaningful conversations with people that are actually running P&Ls and paying people salaries, there is an underlying optimism that I think it's just innate in any founder, any person that leads a business. Like there's this just always on optimism, and
mm,
I do think that spark is still there, and I think the brand that is England or that is the UK or is Great Britain, I think that brand will live on regardless of whether we're in a bit of a rough patch right now or whether we're in a purple patch. Um, so that being said, the government are making it really tricky to be liked, aren't they? Let's be honest. And what really gets my back up with the government is where not just this government, but just governments in
in
general, is where
general, yeah,
certain business policies are being made by people that have never run a business. Now, I know they're running a country. You could argue that the country is some form of a business, based on the sort of the
yeah,
structure of it. But I would challenge, Rachel Reeves, or I would challenge any of these MPs to go and spend, a week or 2 weeks living in the shoes of a small business owner, someone that's really, struggling to make ends meet, and not only spend a day or a week with them in their businesses, but go home and have dinner with them and their families in the evening, and live their life, because they'll realize that the restrictions that they're putting on, that the additional taxes and the squeezing of all of our budgets is it's having a genuinely detrimental effect on people's livelihoods.
yeah,
And not to mention, we don't necessarily need to go down the route of this topic, but not to mention their own stress, their own personal anxieties, their own mental health, that comes as a result of running a business and being responsible for feeding other people's mouths
yeah,
and paying other people's mortgages, right?
hmm
So that would be that would be if I had one message to send to the power, to the people that run the country, is genuinely go and spend time with the small, medium-sized businesses that prop up the entire economy,
yeah,
and actually see what these changes that you make, what they actually have, what they actually make to the food they put on people's plates
hmm
or lack thereof. It's
It's and that's where, funny enough, knowing that you've worked on, I think you said you've like helped build, scale, and sell three companies. I'd love to talk about that because I speak to someone the other day who has a company that was considering selling it. It's a very long story, but we were just discussing, is it a good time to be cash rich? When you're selling company, and most people won't have an idea. They'd understand maybe how to build a company and maybe how to scale it, but less so how to sell it. So, like, how have you managed to start off by getting experience in that? Was it that you learnt to build them first, then scale them, then sell, or you helped sell one first and gained insight from that?
I think it just goes back to making a ton of mistakes as a youngster, just growing up, and that
Yeah,
those mistakes started very, at school, quite frankly, maybe
yeah,
by selling things that I probably shouldn't have been selling.
yeah,
And and then you kind of grow up a little bit and you realize that there's a bit of a structure to this. I mean, I've had loads of businesses that were, I used to be a DJ as well, so I DJ'd a lot. And anyone, if my friends and stuff are listening to this from from the ages of 18 to 28, I DJ'd a lot. And within that, I had various different businesses, whether that be being a self-employed DJ, which in itself is a business, and making sure that you got regular gigs,
Hmm.
but going through to running events and hiring the biggest we hired Judge Jules at his peak as well. Like, I
Yeah.
wish I was on his money at that time. I mean, I
Yeah.
won't tell you what I paid him, but we paid him a lot of money just to turn up and play 2 hour sets. So I guess what I'm saying is, like, these things don't happen overnight, right? And I think my first real exposure to big business and success came in between the years of 2010, 2015,
Right.
um, when I joined a technology business in London that was selling in broad terms. It was a marketing based business, so it would help some of the biggest advertisers in the world to invest their marketing budget more effectively.
Hmm.
So this is on things like Google pay per click. Again, I'll keep out of the weeds, but it essentially means that a business that might be spending £1 million a month or even a week in some cases on Google advertising can just squeeze more um, return on investment from that budget.
Yeah.
That in its most basic description, right?
Mm.
And so that 5 years, I joined as an account manager actually, and very quickly grew, I guess, professionally and up through the ranks, and kind of left there as it's like senior director or
Mhm.
just under VP. But during that time, we grew that company significantly. From I was like the 10th person, and when I left, we had 650 globally.
Wow.
And so the trajectory, a lot of these people talk about, they read these books about hockey stick growth, where you kind of go along a little bit and then suddenly it just shoots straight up. Well, I've been through that, and it's a wild ride, and it's not for the faint of heart, and it certainly suits a younger man
Yeah.
that doesn't have kids. Well, I mean, yeah, you can have kids,
Fine. I
but
mean, the juggling of is that because for someone that wouldn't understand, like, because people would think that hockey stick growth is great because up means good, but
Mm.
as you said, I guess there's can you cope with that?
It's
Is the team around you, is the systems in place?
exactly. It's 100% to do with the team. Obviously, you've got to have a good product. The market's got to be ready for it. That's the other huge. So timing, number one element to any of this stuff is the number one. Without timing, without the market being ready, without the person, without the thing being ready, like, nothing will take off. So the planets have to align, and that's why it's quite a rare occurrence. But yeah, but you need to be ready. You need to have the team. But I can tell you that it was great. Like the stories that we would share amongst our teams, we'd come in. And I remember speaking to a guy called James, and he was on the professional services side, so not even on the sales side, but he was on the delivery side of it. And we joked because last night he had a dream, or he'd been dreaming about onboarding clients and going through the process. And I was like, dude,
Yeah.
I've been dreaming the same shit, man.
It's
you
tough.
know,
Yeah.
really intense, really, like, and everyone loved it. And everyone had kind of gone through something personally, which meant that actually they just wanted to focus on this job because it kind of gave them a distraction from some of the crap that was going on in their lives.
Yeah.
And that just was just the perfect melting pot. And so we grew that company, and in 2014, 15, we were successful in IPOing that business onto the New York Stock Exchange. And so our CEO rang the bell, and all the leadership team were a part of it. But that just gave me an insight into what really needs to happen in order for fast growth, in order for any business to scale.
Yeah.
But that was, yeah, baptism of fire, and it was incredible. Yeah,
Would you
incredible.
find then as well, we're going back to let's say 2015 even, that these days, obviously people are working so much more remote that you can, in
Mm,
theory, have a team that never really meets because they're dotted all around the
mm.
world. Like, were you obviously back then it was less so, and it certainly wasn't AI involved like it is now. But did you find that has obviously changed over the years? That now,
Yeah.
because I've spoke to some people that say they've never met their colleagues, but that you can have one in San Francisco, one in wherever, one in London.
Yeah. Yeah, no, this was 5 days a week in the office. This was, those days. I remember there's a book actually called The 4 Hour Work Week by a
Mm.
guy called Tim Ferriss. I read that book in 2014 for the first time, and it fucking changed my world. I was like, oh my God. you can operate like this. And so, if nobody's read it, the premise is basically, 4-hour work week is like condense all of your work into 4 hours, and then you can do stuff that you enjoy or brings you,
Mm.
enlightenment outside of that. The reality is doing a 4-hour work week is folly. It's not realistic. But actually, the first step in that was to have uh, negotiate working from home 1 day a week. That's like the first steps. If you read it, that's kind of like the bit that he coaches you on in the beginning, and then you kind of like, you build up to 4 hours
Mm.
working wherever. Anyway, the reason why this is important to your question is that it gave me the confidence to go and negotiate a 1 day a week working from home when this was just not a thing,
Yeah.
right? And the premise behind that was let me work from home, and I will double my output, like literally, because avoiding all the distractions, don't have a commute in and
You.
out.
Yeah.
I'll double me up, and I did, and I smashed it, and it was very luckily for me, the team, the line manager at the time said that managed to negotiate and got it signed off, and it worked. Now, the reason why that's an important point because you fast forward to today, and like the working the fact that you can't work from home is just it doesn't exist. Everyone has it's almost a privilege. It's not even a privilege anymore. It's almost a given, right? Like
Mm.
everyone has to work from home. But we've gone completely the other way. I think certainly this year there's a bit of a course correct,
Yeah.
and there are businesses now that are, in fact, there is one business which will remain nameless who are enforcing 5 days a week, and I think
Mm.
that that's a recipe for disaster. And I think they're not going to be able to attract good talent, and I've been quite vocal about that. But most businesses now adopt a mandatory 2 to 3 days in the office. I haven't heard of any business that has um, reprimanded or disciplined someone for not adhering to that. It's
Mm.
kind of like slap on the wrist, come on, buddy, we need you in thing. But I think what what businesses are failing to communicate with their staff is the true benefit of camaraderie and in-person interaction,
Yeah. Massive.
and all the peripheral benefits that come with that are quite difficult to measure.
Yeah.
And an obvious one is like, to coin an American phrase, like the water cooler conversations, right? Or
Mm.
the coffee machine chats, or you bump into someone physically or metaphorically in the corridor, and
Yeah.
it sparks a reminder to go and talk about that one thing that you thought about in the shower 3 days ago,
Yeah.
right? Like those are the supplementary or peripheral benefits that come with working in an office and
Mm.
working in an in-person environment. And I don't think businesses are doing well, they're not doing a job anywhere near good enough to promote this, going back to the younger generation that are coming through, and even people in their 20s and 30s that have probably forgotten what the benefits are of working.
Especially, you're right. It's of course, people shouldn't say, "Oh, well, I just want to work in the office because the social aspect." But you're right. Obviously, I speak to a lot of guys in different forms, and
Mm.
interesting. I was at the one of the Formula One teams last week, and they had a specialist talking there about optimization. And when he talked about working from home, he said what they've found is that the sweet spot for, again, this is an average because you'll have some people that hate working from home, some that love it and will argue either way. But he said, if you can have that hybrid where you worked, two and three, either 2 days in the office, 3 days at home, or 3 days in the office, two at home, if
Yeah,
that makes sense.
yeah,
And of course, some people listen to this, like when I worked in the city, you could not work from home. We had,
sure.
we were brokers, you needed to be around. But one thing I found also, and I wrote about this on LinkedIn, was just like you said, you miss the social aspect of it. Also, the commuting in, I used to stand talking to friends on the train and what have you. Also, about dating, because I know so many people that met their partners, and I met Emma at work, and I met other partners at work, and I had lots of friends in the city that were with boyfriends, girlfriends, husbands, wives, or maybe other people's husbands and wives, but that's neither here nor there.
Mhm.
And you're right, it's that kind of thing. If you're just stuck at home on your own, yes, you can be productive, but do you miss out on other parts of life?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, the commute is funny now. The commute is it was frowned upon, and I find it odd that you were speaking to people on a train in London, Anthony. That you must be one of those weirdos
Yeah. It was
that
just a friend I knew already. Yeah. We used to prop
I'm
each
one of
other up
those.
when we were hungover.
Yeah, I'm one of those as well. I've had brilliant conversations on the train, but they very rarely happen, do they?
Mm.
Um, but no, the commuting is a really interesting topic because now, and I'm one of these. I will, I've got a dog, and I will walk. Like I'll finish my day, and I will need to before I get the barrage of, can I play with Play-Doh and do? Can you help me with some coloring with all the
Yeah.
kids? With the kids, I will kind of bypass that, take the dog out, and do a lap round the block
Disconnect.
just to disconnect. And that's almost my commute. And I bumped into my neighbor recently, bless her, and she was walking towards me, and it was a weird time for her to be out because it was the morning. And I said, "What are you up to?" She said, I'm walking to work." I said, "But we live next door to each other." She said, "I
Yeah.
know." But if I don't get this walk in now,
Yeah.
I'm stuck to my machine. I'm in back to backs, and before I know it, it'll be 5 o'clock, and I'm in mum mode again.
We called it the fake commute because, like you
Yeah.
said, one of the guys that was in the network, James, said about, you know, before you go from bed to laptop, you
Mm.
miss that brain disconnect from the work and the home life.
Yeah.
And as you said, rightly so, to just go out, and even if it's a 5 minute stroll, also the importance of getting natural light. I know we're in the UK and it's
Yeah.
dark till about 8 o'clock in the morning now, but
Yeah.
before you go into natural light, again, heard about this at a lot of the Formula One place. Getting daylight, natural light into your eyes, not behind glasses, not behind contact lenses,
Yeah.
uh, is important. And I was going to ask you, because obviously over the years you'll have worked, I would guess, long hours, had stressful times and what have you. How have
Mm.
you managed to navigate, obviously family, but your own kind of, and I frustrate myself by using the term well-being because
Mm.
it encompasses so much. But a lot of guys can get stressed, overworked,
Yeah.
whatever. How have you managed to navigate all of that?
Yeah, and it is, it is stressful. I think the Marin days for me were a great kind of teacher, if you like, or it kind of taught me about being resilient and or being able to cope under stress. I think the next level of stress does change, but the moment you become the owner of a business that's responsible for employees, depending on your demeanor or how your mindset is, it does play. It's a difficult thing to manage, and so the stress element of running a business is huge. I mean, unfortunately, I've been through a burnout period, and during just out or just during 2020, and it really kind of opened my eyes up to like how fraught it can be to go through this process. And so
What did that
um,
look like to you? Like, let's say if someone said, well, "What do you mean burnout?" Because obviously, I guess it can mean different things. And people are like, what do you
yeah.
think led you to it, and what did it show up like in you, as it were?
Yeah. Oh, I mean, there was loads of things. In fact, I've written about it. I was gonna, help. Here's a little plug for the book.
Yep.
But I mean, this is like 3 or 4 years old now. But I've written about this stuff quite openly, and on LinkedIn as well. But no, I mean, it creeps up on you. It creeps up in blocks, and it kind of builds its wall, and then suddenly it smashes you over the head with it, and it all everything can just come crumbling down. So it's a sinister thing that creeps and grows over time, and you don't really recognize it until it's sort of hit you. I mean, I reflecting on it, I would have, if it happened to get, if it were to happen to me or to someone else, I would be able to see some of the signs, I believe.
Yeah.
But a lot of it is internal. A lot of it is you don't, it's very difficult to project burnout because it's all happening within your head and within your tummy typically, kind of feeling, the knotty tummy and the feeling of anxiety and so on. And really it just grows until the point, for me at least, it grew until, I was like, well, I physically can't do this. I was unwell. Obviously the sleep deprivation or the ability the inability to sleep, or to remain asleep, that was
Mhm.
the thing that I really struggled with, and that would be a compounding effect. And I'm sure if you've got people listening here, that the dreaded like 3 4 a.m. wake up for no reason whatsoever other than you wake up and you start thinking about the problem for the business, or whether that deal's going to land or not, like that's a really big tell. And that that the stress is, there's an imbalance in stress, because stress is, there is some level of healthy stress, or things that keep you on your toes, but when it goes sort of the other way, um that's a good tell, lack of
Yeah.
sleep or really poor sleep. And I think the thing for me, the kind of the nail in the coffin, I guess, was I think it was back end of 2020. It was probably this time of the year actually, and we'd had snow. And I remember just I was awake. It was like 3 or 4 a.m. and like I had to leave. I was just awake in bed, and I just got up and just had to go outside. And I was just it was snowing, I was and I was just in my shorts and t-shirt, barefoot,
Yeah.
and I was just like standing there, just didn't know what the fuck to do. It's just like, what's going on?
Yeah.
Um, and my wife came out, bless her, and we kind of like talked about it. And that really, for me, that was, in fact, it was weird because it kind of helped because the coldness going through the feet, there was this cold therapy that actually kind of
Mm.
really helped actually and kind of sparked my head into kind of thinking a bit clearer. Um, but it was a moment of like, what are you doing, dude? You need to sort this out. So, I did seek some help, work with a therapist who I'd never worked with a therapist in my life, but she was brilliant. And, just understood kind of where I was and helped me to work through a bunch of stuff. And
What do you think
uh,
you changed around of your either environment or working hours, or what do you think would be like a few key things that you made a
yeah,
change?
well, there was loads, and I wasn't planning on plugging this.
No, carry on.
But this is, I think you can probably get it for like 99p on Amazon or whatever. But there's stuff in here that like to go back to your point, like you asked, what would you do to sort of balance it or to relax, to kind of get over the stress. And so what I was sort of leading up to, and to answer your question, is that there are certain strategies that even today I still deploy to make sure that I don't revert back to that.
Yeah.
And like really basic things such as, not checking your phone, like not checking your phone until a certain time. So, I won't open my phone until 8 a.m., for example. So I mean, I'm up at 5:30 most days in the gym. I'll open my phone to get the sport, the fitness app open and work through that. But I won't check emails, won't check
Emails.
LinkedIn, won't do WhatsApp. I just because as soon as you start getting into that world, suddenly your brain's ticking over. So that's
Yeah.
like practical step number one is don't check
Yeah.
uh, social media until a certain time. In my case, it's 8 a.m.
Because it's
Right?
so hard for men. I've said before, 10 years ago, if you'd have said to men, what are the top five struggles you have?
Yeah.
Social media would never, ever, scrolling would never be one of those, let's say 5 to 10 years ago. Whereas now, so many men I know, and I find myself doing as well. I've said it on so many podcasts,
Yeah.
I might go to message you on LinkedIn, or it could be anything. And then 5 minutes later, you're scrolling. You're like, what was I doing?
Yeah.
And you're right.
It's
It's,
it's nonsense as well. Like
yeah.
half the time you're reading through it and it's just absolute nonsense. But yeah, I mean, I can just read these off from here, but
Mm,
these were like transformational for me. They genuinely helped. Obviously sleep being one, exercising regularly, it's a given, but I mean, I've taken my health really seriously this year, certainly my fitness, and I'm in the best shape of my adult life, really.
yeah.
Um, you know, Taking holidays sounds obvious, but making sure that you do actually take a holiday, and a holiday could be a weekend, in an Airbnb just in the countryside, half hour
Yeah.
down the road,
Just
right?
change your scenery and
Yeah, change the scenery, and I think I mean, this one for me was probably the biggest one, and that was I discovered the Wim Hof method. I discovered Wim Hof,
mm,
and everyone, if you're listening, you've probably heard of Wim Hof today. But back when I discovered him in 2020, it literally transformational. So for those of people that don't know Wim Hof, he's a guy, he's a Dutch guy, lives in Poland, but he's developed a breathing method that essentially allows you to get lots of oxygen into your body, and it releases all sorts of endorphins, makes you feel pretty good, can make you feel a bit giddy, but it essentially flushes your body with oxygen, and what that does, it has a mechanism for killing bacteria. It has a mechanism for fueling certain parts of your body if you've got aches and pains. It can help to regenerate some of those. And it forces more oxygen into the brain, which can help you to think more clearly. And so the breath work was pivotal in not only just rehabilitating myself, but
mm,
building that ongoing sort of relaxation or mindfulness capabilities within my work because it suited me as a bit of a geezer who would never do you know meditation and all that sort of stuff. Well,
yeah.
this gets you into meditative state within 30 breaths, and you
Hmm.
can do it lying down on a sofa, right?
Yeah.
Um, and then layered on top of that, depending on how far you want to go, is like cold water therapy. So he's considered the Iceman if you go and Google him. and he does some really extreme things with ice. And so you don't need to go that far, but just having a moderately cold shower, like having a shower that's colder than you normally have it, would be a
Mm.
great step in that direction.
Yeah.
Or having a shower that's on all the way onto cold and standing in that for 30 to 60 seconds. It's remarkable how healthy it is to do that, because it forces blood flow to go into your vital organs, because it goes into a bit of a shock state.
Mhm.
Um, and all those things just help to maintain our engines, essentially.
Yeah.
That's like, I mean, we're talking like entry level Wim Hof here. This is like, 5 minutes on a sofa, maybe 7 minutes on a sofa,
Yeah.
60 seconds in a cold shower. And like those things had a fucking transformational effect on me. And then that opened the door to like, oh, well, what is this kind of meditation? So I got into a bit of meditation. And again, there's like nice apps like the Mindful app, Mind app, or Calm, sorry,
Mhm.
app. But there's loads of free stuff on YouTube. So you can just spend a little bit of time. You can
Yeah.
the door sort of opens slightly, and you get some of these things. And I'd say that combined with making sure that I get outdoors and just enjoy the nature and that sort of thing, like, has just given me a fresh perspective, and I carry these things through, with me, since 2020 to today.
It's it's one of those things where I was trying to explain to guys, no one's telling you to do all of these things at once.
Hmm.
And like you say, and one of the big realizations I had after years of helping men was that sometimes you weren't even giving them new information. You were reminding them the stuff they'd forgotten to do that they knew was beneficial.
Hmm.
And it would be, I was on a call with the other guy with the other day with the guy that joined the network, and when we talked about like what does he enjoy doing that's good for you, and good for your mind and body. And he'd said about he loves swimming, and I said, when was the last time you went swimming? It was months and months and months, because he's just so fucking busy. And I
Yeah.
said, if you take nothing else from this call, book a swimming a swimming block and go to it.
Yeah.
There was another guy who joined, who I had a conversation with, and again, it's so easy to try and do some of these things, then life gets in the way of kids and emails and work, what have you, and then feel shit about it and not go back to it. And in a way, this is like our reminder to say, yes, it's transformative, but B, like you said, it's entry level. Start with one, and you
Mm.
can build up from there.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. That's it. I think you've just got to start. You've got to be willing to make a bit of a change, really. Just change a
Mm.
habit or two.
Yeah,
That's what it is. I think it's impossible to redesign your entire life in one go, but I think, yeah, making small little steps, small little adjustments.
chip away at it. Well,
Yeah, yeah,
I was going to
exactly.
ask about, I mean, in a way, going back to, money is such an important part of all our lives. And
Mm.
it always makes me laugh sometimes when I've known people that have got loads of money that say, oh, money doesn't mean much to me. And you say, well, that you're in a position to be able to say that because you're not scrabbling around for stuff. And I know, again, we talked about the economy earlier, but I wonder, I wanted to talk about AI only briefly, in the fact that, of course, yes, we've been told it will take everybody's jobs. Then some people will say, obviously, it depends how you use AI. And for me, also, I don't want people to become so reliant on AI that they forget that they have their own skills and
Mm.
capabilities. What's your overarching thoughts on like how you've seen businesses implementing AI into kind of your area?
Yeah, I mean, it's probably a whole podcast on that, but I think
Mm,
in summary, I think it's a what people have to remember is that it's not AI versus human, right? It's AI plus human,
yeah.
or human plus AI,
Hmm.
depending on the ring walk you want to take. I'm
Your
sure.
stance, yeah.
Yeah. Um, so you just got to remember that. And the thing with AI generally, certainly today at least, is AI is well, certainly these large language models, the chat GPTs, the kind of the consumer-led or easy access AI models. They are an accumulation. They've been trained on human data that we've all created, and all that they're doing is they're pooling that data, and they mine it in a clever way and come back with something cohesive that looks like a sensible answer that might be true,
Mm,
right? And I'm talking specifically about these chat models, but they are just replicating human. They are just copying, stealing human IP essentially. And I think people need to be very clear on that and to remember that. And then once they've understood that, it's then treating these machines as as you would any other kind of like Google search, where you might cross-reference, double check,
Mm.
make sure that the suggestion that it's come up with is actually correct, because they
Yeah.
do hallucinate and they are
Small
wrong.
details. Yeah.
Yeah, and the thing is, if you read it, and LinkedIn's rife with it. Every person is taking verbatim, things that a model has created, and they're copy pasting it into LinkedIn, and it makes them sound really smart. And you can read this stuff, and it just stinks of ChatGPT
Yeah.
instantly. There's no spelling mistakes. There's no like um personality. There's no
You can smell it when you read it, can't you?
yeah, exactly, yeah. And we like a mistake. We
Yeah.
like a little error. We like to know that there's a human behind it that's typed it, and and they've got a couple of letters around the wrong way. It doesn't really
Mm.
matter, because we know that we're talking to someone. Um and so that's it. We're talking about I mean, obviously AI is a really deep topic, but we're talking about consumer bots at the moment, which is 95% of how people are consuming AI
Mm.
consciously, and there's a subconscious level to this topic as well. And I think people that and businesses, should I say, that are making the best use of this are those that understand that this is an augmentation of how human beings react or work in the workplace. So from a sales and marketing perspective, there is an unlimited use case for these chatbots. So whether it is writing content or the supporting of
Mm.
writing content, whether it's using the computing power to crunch numbers in a spreadsheet,
Yeah.
to do analysis on data to come back with to surface insights that can then be led on to make changes to your marketing strategy, or to make
Mm.
it's unlimited, and it has to a degree cannibalized a lot of what people would do normally, but it's
Yeah.
also meant that what was taking ages, or what was a job that people didn't really like to do, can now be done in a couple of seconds by a machine.
Mm.
So the question therefore leads on to, well, what next for human beings, right? So if
Yeah.
if mundane, shitty tasks are being taken care of by the machines, and to a degree it's pretty accurate, where does that leave us? Well, where that leaves us is in a place of more ideation, more creativity, more room to breathe and to come up with new ideas that, quite frankly, AI is going to copy in the
Mm.
future, which is what they're doing currently.
Yeah.
Um, and so the people that are today investing in themselves, or investing in um, the arts, the creative arts, the kind of creating something from nothing, and that could be with the use of a tech piece of technology like AI,
Yeah.
but being able to feed it with the initial concepts, or the thing that you're looking to bring to life. That's the bit that AI can't replace, because it's not sentient um, yet, and who knows if it ever will be.
Yeah.
But even if it does become that, there's still going to be the nuance of
Mm.
human beings that can't be replicated. The pausing,
Yeah.
the mirroring of people on the other side of the screen, or the call. You know, the yeah, the kind of the ebb and the flow of how a
Mm.
conversation might go. And
It's interesting you say that, because I having published 800 and something like articles, and I also enjoy reading other people's stuff, because you take ideas from, no one has new ideas, it's all just regurgitated generally.
mm,
But it was really disappointing that actually some of the people I followed, who I held their ideas and the way they wrote, the stories they come up with in high regard, then one day it was like that, and you could just tell it had all been spat out by AI. And
yeah,
like you said, it completely lost. You didn't realize, you didn't feel like you were listening to them anymore.
yeah,
And it kind of, I guess you could argue, if the information's valuable, does it matter? But for me, you're right. Part of it is the personal experience of when that email drops in from that person. I'm
mm,
looking forward to hearing them, not a robot's, or not a robot's generation of another idea, if that
yeah,
makes sense. But no, I agree. AI could be a topic that you can go kind of deep on, and it's only going to get more interesting as things develop. And just as you said, I try and remind guys, don't rely on it to be creative for you necessarily, but do use it to save you time. I mean, even with the whole
yeah,
Man Academy, I've done it where we've got quiz with lots and lots and lots of data, And you can imagine it'd take me like a week to analyze it, but you can download it, put it into AI, and it will, bring up the
Yeah.
10. And you're like, wow, that is it is game changing, to be honest.
Yeah.
Well, I wanted to talk about, when we go on to talk about money, scaling businesses, selling businesses, the identity of ambitious men, because clearly you spend a lot of time, you are one, and you spend a lot of time around them. I just wonder, it's an interesting time to be a man, but also when you're trying to juggle the pressure of money and family and expectation and everything else. Like, what have you seen in the last 5 to 10 years for men who are juggling the landscape, as it were?
Um, yeah, it's quite a big question, I guess. I think men that are generally the happiest, I would say, if that's one way to answer the
Mm,
question, I would say are those that um have not lost their inner child, like their inner sense of fun, and,
yes.
and to not take themselves too seriously because it's we all live busy lives and we're all doing important things in terms of through our lens they're important, but to everyone else it's nonsense, like or it's maybe not, but it's less
I know what
important.
you mean. Yeah. Yeah.
And I think the people that the happiest entrepreneurs that I know are those that put everything into perspective and don't lose their sense of fun,
Yeah.
um, and have a balance. I mean, again, everybody's different. I mean, everyone's sense of happiness or achievement or the sense of fun can relate to very different things. I think if you asked Elon what his sense of fun is, I mean, fuck, I'd like to know the answer to that question
Yeah.
actually, but it's probably it probably is, working 90 hours a week,
Yeah. Building.
and yeah, and getting himself to Mars across these five massive entities that he's running.
Mm,
Um, whereas, for me, particularly, like if I don't have a if I think if I don't have the sense of, I do a lot of what I do to give me and my family freedom to do the extracurricular things that we enjoy doing. So for
yeah.
me personally, it's about spending time at big wild lakes fishing for the biggest carp that we can find in either in this country or across on the continent.
Yeah.
And I'll travel a lot. I'll travel a lot with my little dog who's surprisingly hasn't barked yet. And I'll do that by myself or I'll do that with friends. And in some cases, we'll go with the family and we'll take a camper van, right? So those things I place with a lot of importance and a lot of
Yeah.
value to them. And there's a certain amount of money that needs to achieve to do those things, but it's surprise, it's just it's affordable for most, right? So that's kind
Yeah.
of my point. Um, but that's sort of the thing that is really important to me. So I think for anyone that's either on the path or thinking of getting onto the path or further down the path and looking to exit, it's like, what are you actually going to do with your time once it comes back to you?
Mm,
Because you can get into this trouble with, people that retire or people that talk about retiring, um, and they get to the grand old age of whatever it is now, 65 years, and they retire and suddenly they go into revert, like they've got
yeah.
nothing, they spend the first three, the pattern is it's like 1 to 3 months of an impeccably clean house and a immaculate
Pottering.
garden. Yeah, you do everything that you need, and then you suddenly go, oh well, fucking hell, what am I meant to do now? And it's the same if you sell a business. I've seen people that have kind of grown massive businesses or grown businesses to a certain size.
Yeah.
They've exited them and then realized that actually it wasn't the accumulation of wealth or gaining the wealth, it was the road to wealth that they
Mm,
enjoyed.
the game.
Exactly, yeah. And there's a famous, well, it's a famous phrase. I guess it's famous in our sector, but there's a an entrepreneur in the business in the fishing industry that always reminds us to smell the roses along the way,
Hmm.
because if you don't and you get there and suddenly you exit the company and all that's gone, it's like we haven't enjoyed the journey. It might sound a bit cliche depending on what books and what sort of people you follow or the listeners follow, but the road to wealth is paved with the goal, and you enjoy it along the way
Mm,
versus when you get there and you've got this realization of, oh, I've got this massive pot of money but nothing to do in the
yeah.
morning,
Yeah.
which is quite dangerous depending on the individual in case, because they could decide to go on a slightly different slightly
Yeah.
different path with their time that might be less favorable for their health. So yeah, be careful what you wish for. And I think there's other businesses that I've seen that have they've thought about an exit, and then they've had that realization, and then actually what they've done is they've either sold a part of the company, or they've had a part, management buyout, or they've managed to kind of free themselves away from it, and then really
Mm.
just sat and become chairman, or they've
Yeah.
sat and become, kind of overseeing the company versus running it, and that's enough for them.
Because
So they
would you say obviously that at some point, more money doesn't make a difference if you're, if we're
Mm,
talking of millions here. And it's interesting. I was on a call the other day with a chap who asked me about, if you came into a massive load of money now, how would it change? And it's always a really interesting question. How would it change you? And I said, honestly, I would not stop running the Whole Man Academy because I love doing it, and that's why I'm happily get up early and start late, because it's not, oh, I've got to go to work. It's I love it. I said what it would change for me is your ability to, when I say scale, it's not just to make things bigger, but to like branch out and have, like pilot things around the country where you had men connecting, stuff like that. But I
yeah.
guess it's that, and you rightly said about it's a bit like the why of why you're doing it, because you don't want to get to the top of the tree and look around and realize that your family hate you or they don't even know who you are.
Yeah, exactly. I think there's a research paper. I think they interviewed like four billionaires on their deathbed, and they said, what was the one thing that you regret? And it's said that exact same thing. I wish I'd spent more time with my family
Right.
and loved ones. That's that number one regret for
Yeah.
every single billionaire on their deathbed. And
Yeah.
like to get to that level of wealth, it takes an extreme amount of um, give and take, right? There's an extreme amount of um, uh, compromise to get
Mm.
there, and that for them is maybe the thing that gives them happiness on that road to wealth, but
Yeah.
you have to sacrifice a lot.
Hmm.
And I think that is probably the difference, I would say, between those that create extreme wealth, is they've just got extreme views on things that they're willing to cut out of their life to get
Yeah.
there.
It's such an interesting topic because again, I think I said to start with, most people would have an idea of how to build and scale, but not necessarily sell. How easy is it? I know this is an open question because it depends on business, but like let's say if someone had a medium-sized company now and they're thinking of selling it, where do you start? Are there obviously agencies or organizations that you can go to that they will then act as like a broker to people that are potential buyers? How does that work?
Yeah, it does vary depending on the size of the organization, obviously the sector, the age of the business, who's already invested. So, there's all these different questions. I think
Mm.
what I would encourage anyone that's looking to do, if they've got a business and they're eyeing some kind of exit, and that exit could be a partial exit as well. That's something else that people may not know exists, but
Yeah.
is understanding what they want, like the why that they want to sell. And there's loads of different reasons. And one of the reasons for me at the time for wanting to sell my business, is that I could see the market shifting,
Mm.
and it wasn't, and it kind of tied in with the burnout. The burnout didn't help, but but I could just see that the writing was on the wall from a certain perspective. And I was like, right, well, I'm done. I've built this business is kind of where I want it to go.
Yeah.
And so I actively begun kind of having conversations with larger versions of my agency to see if they'd
Right.
be interested, right? Incidentally, and this is an interesting sort of side topic, is that the company that bought my business found me weirdly. And so you can kind of like
Right.
you can align that to luck if you believe in luck, which
Yeah.
yes and no, I'm on the fence on that topic, but I do certainly believe that the universe rewards you depending on how you think and what you want.
Hmm.
So at the time, I was very clear, like I'm done, we're getting out, and and so I had two offers on the table, and the one offer, then the inbound I got through LinkedIn was like, hey, are you thinking of, would you consider selling your company? So going back to my original thing around timing was perfect because I was
But
already.
you don't want to go, yes.
Well, no, exactly. But
Yeah.
that comes down to the negotiation. I guess being in sales and having an agency that did sales on behalf of other companies, I was
Yeah.
maybe a little bit
Ahead
had
of
a
the
little bit of
game.
an unfair advantage. So that's how I did that, and we did a deal, and it went through, and it got sold to a larger group, and that was, that was fine. But there are, to your point, there are brokerage firms that specialize in doing this, and so anyone that's thinking of doing that, well, I can kind of point in a few directions, but there are companies that are set up to do that, and there are businesses that are aggressively looking to acquire other businesses of similar ilk. So, one of my current clients, they sold their company last year, and to an American firm, and so they bought America do this quite often. They come to the UK, snap up the profitable businesses, and that gives them a foothold into the UK. So that's quite a common method. So there's obviously businesses outside of the UK that would are looking for entry points in.
Yeah.
I'm talking to companies in Bulgaria actually, which is on the up and up in terms of their affluence and their ambitions. And there's loads of companies there that are already doing business in the UK but want to do more. So there's these kind of, and I'm connected with the Chamber of Commerce there, and we're talking about doing lots of different things. But that's like an example of, you might not think, an Eastern European country, or that is that they could have the capital to essentially buy out, or to buy you out, or to certainly buy a portion of the company out. So that's one way. And then again, when I said it depends on the size of the company and how they're funded. If they're private equity backed, or they've got venture capitalists within the business, no doubt, well, they've invested in that for 2 to 5 years in order to get some kind of return.
Yeah.
And so they will be proactively looking at how do we get that return, as well as making sure that they're providing the relevant sort of coaching levels to make sure the senior leadership team are well equipped to deliver on that. So it sort of varies, but yeah, I think depending on where the business is, regardless of where the business is, one just needs to become very, very clear on the intention. And the unit, sounds a bit woo-woo, but the universe sort of will take care of it after that. But the intention needs to be clear, unwavering, like, this is what we're going to do, or this is why I want to do this.
Yeah.
And then the universe will start to bend around you accordingly.
What was it like then, as you said, obviously with selling your own company, or also you've seen with other, guys that were selling theirs, the moment when you're waiting for how can I put it, for want of a better phrase, like the money to drop into the account. Because
Yeah.
I assume there's a period before that where you're thinking, if there's a snag or things go wrong.
Yeah.
Talk to me about that, because it must be an interesting time if you think that that's going to happen, especially if you're selling something you've worked on for could be decades.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the moment, I mean, from I can talk about it from my perspective.
Mm,
The it is a lot of stress. It's like any deal though, really. I mean, if
yeah,
you're used, again, it's probably a bit unfair because I've sold, reasonably large deals in sort of seven figures in the past.
mm,
There's always this, I mean, whether I'm selling a 3 grand deal or £1 million, there's always that, like, you kind of get yourself into the mindset of like, have I done everything? Have we set out our stall in the best possible way for there to be success here? And it's the same with selling companies. So I would recommend, if you're going through that, to get a good advisor. You know, if you're using a brokerage, talk to a few, make sure that they're the right fit. But yeah, it's just managing that process. But when it does hit, it is exhilarating. I mean, when my wife and I we went for a drink, so it happened. It was 17th of September 2021,
yeah.
and we that day, yeah, we only had the one kid then, but I'm not sure where the kid was actually. Maybe we just put her in the TV room. I can't remember, but anyway, we went for a drink, and I just, we went to, local bar just up in Crystal Palace. I remember sat there. We ordered two mojitos, or a mojito each, and we sat there. We were outside in the garden, and it was, it was reasonable weather. And I remember just got the kind of cocktail, sat there, and I was just like, I just slumped onto the desk like this. Hadn't even taken a sip of it,
Yeah.
and then just kind of got up and was like, "We've done it." And she's like, "Yeah, we have." And then we kind of celebrated, and it was just,
What now?
yeah. Well, it was a case of what now. It was also a case of like, this is the new chapter, because there was an earn out period. Don't forget, like, these things, they don't just. There's no, well, what I'm familiar with is it's not like money hits and then it's the end of it. There's often an earn-out period.
Yeah.
And in this case, it was relatively short. I mean,
Can you
again,
explain what that, if someone's like, I've never heard of an earn out period, I mean, I don't fully know what it
yeah,
is. Can you explain briefly what it is?
yeah. So let's just say, like keep it round figures. Let's
Yeah.
say that you sold the business for 1 million,
Yeah.
right? And again, there's literally tens of ways that you can structure these deals. But let's say that it was valued at 1 million, so whoever's going to buy it is going to pay 1 million for it, right? What they'll often do is they'll say, right, well, we'll pay you, or what a common way is like, we'll pay you 500K up front, right? And then the other 500,000 we're going to hold in reserve and we're going to pay you over a certain period of time based on hitting certain revenue milestones. It's normally revenue and EBITDA driven. So
Right.
EBITDA is essentially a measure of profitability without taking into consideration tax and insurances and stuff like that. So they'll say, look, you have to hit a certain number of sales at a certain revenue, hit a certain revenue target, and you need to be at a certain profitability target. And each year, on a given date, we'll pay you the rest of that million.
Right.
You see
Yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah.
And then if you fall slightly short of that target, then you'll get paid less as a result. If you exceed it, you might have some sort of accelerator built in. So if you maybe you hit the target in a year, and you might bring the earn out period from 2 or 3 years down to one.
Yeah.
There's all and this is where it gets really complicated, and you
Yeah.
do need experienced brokers to kind of
I
advise on
bet.
this. Um, but yeah, so that's often what happens is there'll be an earn out period, so you get a chunk of money, and then and it's a sensible thing to do for any acquirer, because often with most businesses, certainly small to medium sized businesses, a lot of the intellectual property a lot of it, although you're buying it, the goodwill of the company often sits with the founder and the
Mm.
CEO, and a lot some of the IP will actually live in their heads as well. And so and customers have got to know this particular leadership person or team. And so if you went from day one to day two and you've turned that leadership team off in the space of 24 hours, and suddenly you've flown in, the big cheeses from America to start running it,
Yeah.
there's a danger there that you're going to put off clients, and
Big change. Yeah.
yeah, big change, and the clients could get upset or worried, and they might churn, they might stop spending money with you. So there needs to be this transition period is probably the best way to describe it.
Mm.
And during that transition, you are transitioning out of the role, so you're bringing somebody new in, but you're also overseeing the additional sales and revenue to make sure that targets are being hit.
Yeah.
So it is still an ongoing job,
Process.
quite
It's
frankly.
it's so
Yeah.
interesting if you haven't obviously I worked in the city for years, but I was knew everything about what I was doing, but sometimes you'd have other desks that were putting large deals together that took months or could be years, and it was just interesting to see how when we executed a trade, immediately you earned 100% of the brokerage, and the brokerage was paid to each month, and that was it, that was done. But the other people dealing with long-term stuff, like you say, it would be split up and there was performance related numbers.
Yeah.
But I was going to ask you, how did you celebrate, like when you had that initial, I assume, like chunk of money paid into your account, whether it was monetarily you celebrated or what, like what was in your head at the time?
It was that cocktail.
That was it.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't do, yeah, I didn't do anything crazy because I kind of knew what I wanted to do with some of the money afterwards
Yeah.
anyway. So I bought a car, and like you just, little things like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, but there was no,
No big
there was no
splurge.
party, no, or anything like that. It
Well,
was like, okay,
you
like
were
what
going to tell me a Lamborghini story that isn't about Lamborghinis. So what?
Well, that's it. The point, yeah, exactly. Yeah. So the non-Lamborghini story that I've got is it's funny because I mentioned this to I was coaching some startups recently, and I was talking to them last week, and I just said it's funny, like when you reach a point where you've got enough money to buy the Lamborghini, and you know how hard it took to get that money, suddenly having the goal of buying a Lamborghini, but when you've got the money to actually afford it, you're like, you don't really want it.
Yeah. Do I
Uh,
need this?
yeah, and so the first time I ever had that situation where I was like, oh, I could actually buy this, but I know the blood, sweat, and tears that's gone into accumulating this, and
Mm.
also, buying a sports car, unless is a really not a great investment
Yeah,
necessarily.
yeah, it's
It's
going to
completely
depreciate
depreciated.
and
Yeah, and you can buy them in different ways using lease agreements and stuff like that. But it was just very early on in my career, and I had this goal of I wanted to my only goal really, which was just very hollow and shallow, was just I want to buy a Lamborghini.
mm,
And I don't want to drive, I don't want to test drive one, I don't want to drive. I'm just gonna, as soon as I've got enough money, that's what I'm gonna buy. I'm just gonna go to it. And then when I got there, I was like, oh yeah, yeah,
not
no,
now. Yeah.
I'm all right, thanks. Yeah, I'm gonna reinvest it into
Do you know
property.
what? I was talking to a guy, this would be last summer now, of 2024, and he'd bought a bright orange Lamborghini Murcielago, I think it was, or
Mm,
anyway, one of them. It wasn't a Gallardo, but it was one of the others. And he was in his 50s, and he said that he'd said to his wife, "Look, I've always wanted a Lambo.
mm,
Let me buy it. We've got the money, the business is doing very well. Let me buy it, but I promise we'll keep it for I think it was either 1 or 2 years. Then I'll get rid of it. So I know it's inconvenient." And he said she was like, "Oh God, okay, fine." He said, "So I bought it, and he broke down on the way home on the M40." And he
Jeez.
said the classic where you have to phone your wife, who was already slightly, reticent, is that the word? I don't, or what about buying it? And you're like, I'm on the M40, I've already broke down. He said, and also, you've got all the bits open, and people are kind of driving past honking their horn, and you're like, good start. But I
Exactly.
agree. When I first worked at Glencore and we started getting small bonuses, but in the thousands, I remember one of my friends took me aside and said, "Listen, my advice is get 90% of it and bank it, invest it, whatever, but spend 10% of it on something, on you, like so you enjoy it." And it's a good reminder, isn't it? Don't spunk it all up the wall, but you don't have to save all of it. You can enjoy yourself with something or other.
Yeah, I'm all about enjoying it. As I say, some of it, I did buy a car. It wasn't a Lambo, but just do things for your family. Redid the entire kids' bedroom. We sat
Yeah.
there. I think actually one way we did celebrate, just a small thing, which was important, but with my daughter at the time, and I said to her, "We're going to kit out your bedroom. We can design it however you want." And we were on Etsy, and we were on all these places, and we just had this funny. It was just a funny game of like add to basket.
Mm.
It's like, "Do you like that?" Yeah, add to basket. Go on. And we ended up like adding like loads of shit
Bit
to this
loads of stuff.
basket. It was just like, and that was probably my way. That was, and we're not talking silly money, but it was
Yeah,
just
yeah.
that thing of like, I'm just
Yeah.
going to do this for my daughter,
Treat
and
treat yourself.
yeah, and we bought like just little things for our room and stuff like that. So yeah, I'm a relatively modest guy. I think I'm sort of sensible with it. Really, I think my passion is I enjoy sort of property as well. So my kind of investing in that side of things for the long
Mm.
term was sort of the strategy really. So
Yeah.
that was that
Some
was
interest. Oh, and
yeah.
what does, I mean, we're at like basically at the end of 2025 now. So what does 2026 hold for you, like business wise and personal wise, but business wise especially?
Business wise, I'm fully focused on revenue and beyond. This is the thing that's bringing me a lot of joy. I wake up in the morning, every day is different. I work with really smart entrepreneurs, CEOs, and I get to help them build their businesses
Yeah.
and kind of get to help them see around corners. And that could be again anything related to how we generate additional revenue and profit for their business, whether that's through sales or expansion of
Hmm.
existing accounts, and everything in between. So I'm just purely focused on that. I'm working with some really really innovative businesses, and I'm working with some, dare I say it, really boring businesses that are just they've never worked with somebody like me
Yeah.
before,
So it's
and
all new to
so
them.
I'm injecting some of this like best in breed lead generation tactics, or bringing in someone from my fractional SDR community that I can kind of parachute into the business to help generate lots of leads and do some cold outbound, but using really best of breed, like the cutting edge methods and technologies and data sets to help them do. And so these boring businesses, which I love,
Yeah.
are just like, oh shit, this stuff works. I'm like,
Yeah.
yep, told you.
Yeah.
And so they're happy, and I get bits of feedback on Slack or whatever. And so that's the thing that I'm like all in on, focused
Yeah.
in on that. And interestingly, it's not a scalable business. It's
Hmm.
me. I'm building a very tight network of trusted advisors and people that I can bring in when I
Yeah.
don't have the expertise. I can bring I can bring them in, so I don't have to pretend to know everything. It's like, no,
Hmm.
speak to Bob, speak to Sue.
Yeah.
They're way better at this than I am. And that, so it's just me. So I'm building, I'm aiming to scale the most unscalable business that is just me,
Yeah.
and just work with businesses to help grow and help to grow what we're doing, not
Yeah.
just in the UK, but across Europe, America, and Australia as well.
I love it. And also, as you said, it's a good reminder that, none of us know everything. And I'm the same even with the guys in the network, because there's a whole mixture of men that work for your Vodafone and NHS and former special forces types or in the military, and a whole mixture. And I would say I love getting bits of knowledge and ideas from all of them, because one thing you learn in the business you're running can help someone else in theirs. It doesn't have to be in the same field. So
100%.
yeah, and that's the whole point of us all connecting and doing podcasts and events or whatever it is. We all kind of learn from each other, if that, and maybe learn from each other's fuck ups as well, which is always a helpful thing.
Yeah, I've done
Um,
plenty of them in the past.
as I say, we could do another podcast on that.
Yeah.
Well, to finish, 'cause it's been great, but how can guys find you if they were interested in either reading book, working with you, connecting with you on LinkedIn, whatever? What's the best place to get hold of you?
Best place is LinkedIn.
Hmm.
I'm pretty prevalent on there. I put out lots of content. It's designed to be really helpful for businesses that are particularly founder led. That's sort of my current thing at the moment.
Yeah,
So there's tons of content. You can read it, you can digest it, you can ask me questions, you can implement lots of it yourselves. And then if you need help implementing it, then that's where you can bring me in, hire me in, and I'll come in and help. But it's just Simon Watson. If you just Google or go onto LinkedIn, Simon Watson, revenue and beyond, there's only one of me.
yeah.
So you'll find
That's
me for
great.
sure.
I'll make sure I put the link in below so they can. It's always trying to make things as simple as possible.
Yeah, brilliant.
Fantastic, mate. Well, it's been great to talk.
Wonderful.
And I know we
Yeah,
talked on
likewise.
LinkedIn and stuff, but the more I still feel like I'm new to business, even though I've been running the Whole Man Academy and other kind of coaching business alongside. But like you say, it's very different when you're a one-man band, or I have one or two people that help me, compared to when you're talking to 10 staff, 30 staff, 300 staff and up.
Yeah,
So I'm
yeah.
always learning about this stuff, and hopefully the men who are listening can have learnt as well. But and what does the rest of the day hold for you?
I am 1 minute late for my client call,
There you go.
and then yeah, it's just more of the same
Yeah,
really. Just got some delivery work to take care of this week. Speaking to some new companies that potentially want to bring me in and support them what they're in terms of what they're doing.
yeah.
And then Friday, I'm off. So
Resting, taking it easy.
yeah, Friday is when Christmas, the festive period starts for me
Yeah.
and the family, and we're off visiting my folks, both in on the south coast and
Hmm.
then up in north in Hull as well. So yeah, I've got lots
Love
of
it.
traveling to do.
It's the same for us, mate. It's time to enjoy a bit of family time as well. But mate, well, look, I'll let you go on to your next meeting. But it's been an absolute pleasure, and I will speak to you soon, brother.
Thank you, Anthony.
All right,
Take
cheers,
care. All the
Simon.
best.
Welcome to the Whole Man Academy podcast. We cut the bullshit and get real about building your ideal life. If you're done with settling and you've got the guts to aim higher, you're in the right place. We bring you ideas, strategies, straight talk, and real stories from guys who are living life on their terms. Men who refuse to settle for mediocrity. They're here to share the raw truth about what it takes to break free from the mundane and step up your game. Why? Because the world needs strong men now more than ever. And it all starts here at the Whole Man Academy.